Hello again and welcome back to our Change series with David and Anku from Housebase.
Hello.
We've been talking a lot about change from different perspectives, from the executive, middle management, frontline worker perspectives, and we've also talked about how the senior and middle management both have some kinds of fears about the change, and we bumped into the idea of biases and how they affect us and our thinking in situations where change happens. So, David, what are some of those things driving those fears?
Excellent question, Anku, and thank you. We've been kind of looking at people as groups. Now let's take a look inside and look at us as individuals and kind of what are some of those driving things. And fear is a huge driving factor. So we have this fear of being, left out. Think about, even some of the popular TV shows that we have, you're voted off the island, right? You're no longer part of the tribe. You're out of the loop. And we think of some of these expressions and we have this huge fear of not being part of the group. So as a senior leader, do I want to be the one who brings that bad news and I'm not popular anymore, right? And I feel really a lot of empathy for middle management as they're kind of stuck in the middle because of course they're getting these edicts from above. They're having to push those forward. They know what the issues are there and which side do I represent, and you can really get kind of torn apart. And there's a number of biases that start to play into this, and I want to start with confirmation bias. And this can be especially dangerous for senior management. Now, confirmation bias is the tendency for me to seek out information that confirms what I believe. So if I believe the organization should do a right turn, for example, I am most likely to go and find and seek out information that confirms that decision. And at the same time, I'm also really going to discredit any of those opinions that do not confirm my position. So let's say you and I are in a meeting and I'm saying, hey, we need to turn right. And you're like, no, we need to turn left, right? I am less likely to go have coffee with you afterwards and chat about that than I am to say, go talk with my colleague Arrow, who's agreeing with me, right? Mm-hmm. And this is part of that confirmation bias. Now, we as leaders, and when I say leaders, I don't mean senior management, middle management. I'm talking about just as individuals, as being leaders within our organization, because you do not need a title for this. We need to be going and having coffee with Anku. We need to be going and having those conversations with the people who are not agreeing with us, because there is magic in that. There is some beautiful understandings around why and what. You may be seeing something that I don't. You've got a different perspective. And we talked a little bit about Pandora's box earlier. Mm-hmm. And this is what a lot of leaders fear, is that, hey, I think we should be turning right. If I ask everyone, I'm going to get so many diverging opinions. We'll get stalled in analysis paralysis. But I also may get a bunch of opinions that don't agree with me. And we have this confirmation bias that really, really, really doesn't want us to go there.
Yeah, and that, when thinking about it, that will lead us doing decisions based on guessing again, like we discussed.
Absolutely. And as we look at the next bias, which is seniority bias, again, we're back in the room, we're having this conversation. Let's say we are a little bit more involved in that we've actually invited some of the frontline staff into that room. We've invited some of the, programmers. We've invited some of the, the customer service reps. We've invited some of the folks who are on the front lines who are doing the actual work that we're asking to change. And we look around that table and we express opinions. Seniority bias is the bias to follow the most senior voice in the room. Now, if we look at many people's career trajectories, let's say we've got, someone who their aspirations were always towards senior management. They've got their MBA, they went to university, they went to school for this. They're very well qualified and they're very good at their jobs, but they haven't spent any time, kind of at those frontline levels. And yet they're now making decisions that directly impact that. Mm-hmm. If they're a little bit more, savvy, they'll be inviting those voices into the room. but we still have this tendency, this bias to say, okay, I've heard your opinion, now I'm going to turn to the leader and say, okay, now that we've gotten those out of the way, as it were, let's go and listen to the real opinions. And this can be a very, very difficult one to combat because, of course, the job of the leader is to help set some of that direction.
Mm-hmm. What do you think, David? What should a leader do when they see that, oh, I might have some kind of biased thinking in a change process?
Yeah, absolutely. And you've identified the most important piece, which is simple awareness. We think about emotional intelligence. It's about being aware that you have these emotions and that they are there, and then being very intentional around what you do with them and how you act. So when we think about confirmation bias, when we think about seniority bias, it's about, first of all, being aware of them. And once I'm aware of them now I could actually do something. And one of the things that we at Housebase have done very intentionally is how we've developed and designed our platform so that it does take away some of those levels. It takes away, some of that seniority bias so that all the voices are coming in on more of an even level. And depending upon how you implement it, we did talk about facilitation and the importance of that. We can actually remove some of that confirmation bias as well. But I'm just going to squeeze in one more real quick, which is completion bias. And it's kind of appropriate because completion bias is all about trying to get to the finish line. We start down a path, things are not going well, and yet we say, you know what, we've started, we've invested this much, we got to keep going. And this can be a very dangerous one as well, because of course, if we're headed down a bad path, we recognize it's a bad path, we need to have the leadership and the strength to say, okay, time to stop, cut our losses, change direction.
Well said.
Thank you so much.
Let's wrap this whole series about change up. First of all, we discussed that the change should not be managed, it should be led. And we still very much think about it. So don't try to manage change, but lead change.
Absolutely. And that leadership needs to come out from all levels within the organization, regardless of how your organization is structured. And we also need to do some internal leadership within ourselves. So, really coming at it at multiple levels. And I feel like we've only just started to scratch the surface on this change topic. I'm sure we're going to have many more conversations to come.
Yeah. And we at Housebase, we love to talk about how to facilitate and lead change.
Absolutely. So please drop us a line, give us a call. We'd love to have those conversations with you.
Yes.
See you next time.
See you.